طيب, so we're going now to Yawm al-Qiyamah. Not right now, inshallah. We're going in the study of Yawm al-Qiyamah. We finished pretty much, alhamdulillah, Qiyamah al-Sughra, the minor resurrection, which is what?
The major signs?
Before the major and minor signs. What's the other? The death and the barzakh, right? Maut, when you die, that starts your Qiyamah. And then the barzakh, the in-between stage. And then we talked about the signs of the Day of Judgment. If you happen to be alive, you're witnessing these signs that's going to bring about the Day of Judgment. The major and the minor, right? We finished the major last week, and now inshallah we'll start the actual Qiyamah, which is the main event of all these things that we've studied, in the sense that it's the final determination of what's going to happen with everybody. You know, it's something that you're working to. It's something that gives us some type of meaning in life. It gives us a goal to work towards that day, that final ikhtibar, that final imtihan, that final test, the final exam. We're going to pass it and go to Jannah, or who's going to fail it and go to Jahannam. Right? So it's the most important day in terms of finality, and it also gives us some type of sense of justice, that there's going to come a day where judgment will be held, and those people who seemingly get away with things in this dunya, or seemingly do so much injustice, without getting punished for it, they will face their judgment Yawm al-Qiyamah. Right? Every single thing from creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will stand before Allah that day to face the judgment. And we'll start inshallah with just some ayat and then a brief hadith to give kind of a picture of that day. Surah Al-Abasa, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مِّنْهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ شَأْنٌ يُغْنِيهِ. That day, a person will run away from his own brother, right? His own siblings, they will run away from each other. And his mother and his father, the ones that are your closest protectors, the ones that love you the most, that took care of you, the person will be running away from them. And his own spouse and his own children, right? The most important people in your life that you hold so close, that you hold as your confidant, that you take comfort in, will be running away that day. Why? Allah says, لِكُلِّ امْرِئٍ مِّنْهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ شَأْنٌ يُغْنِيهِ. That every person that day will have some concern that keeps him preoccupied on everything else. And that's the sunnah of the bashar, of the humanity. If you are faced with a calamity, even in dunya, some type of major accident or major catastrophe, or like an earthquake or whatever, sometimes you kind of block out everything, right? Because you're so focused on what's happening to you right then and there. It's the fight or flight syndrome, right? So Yawm al-Qiyamah, it's going to be amplified thousands of times more. It's going to be one of the most scariest of events. So everybody that will be scared. Then there's a hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha. She was sitting, with the Prophet ﷺ napping in her lap, and she started to remember this mawqif, like the Day of Judgment, and the hellfire and these things that's going to come about. And she actually started to cry, and the teardrops, they fell upon the Prophet ﷺ and woke him. And then he said, مَالَكَ يَا عَائِشَةَ, what is wrong with you, O Aisha? And she said, دَكَلْتُ النَّارِ فَبَكَيْتُ فَهَلْ تَذْكُرُونَ أَهْلِيكُمْ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. She said, I thought about the hellfire and I started to cry, and then I was wondering, you will forget your own family on the Day of Judgment, O Messenger of Allah? فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم أما في ثلاث مواطن فلا يذكر أحد أحدا. He said, yes, basically, and there's 3 occasions that nobody will remember anybody else. حتى يعلم أن يخف ميزانه أم يثقل, until he knows that his mizan, his scale, has been heavy or light, right? وعند الكتب, in the time of the books, when the books are being distributed. هأم أقرأ كتابي حتى يعلم أين يقع كتابه في يمينه أو في شماله, until the person knows that he has received his book in his right hand or his left hand, or من وراء ظهري, or behind his back, right? And then the third time, and the sirat, when the person is crossing the bridge, right, over the hellfire. So these three occasions, the Prophet is saying this hadith reported by Imam al-Hakim fil Mustadrak, which is classified as Sahih as well. The Prophet said that nobody will remember anybody else, right? So even on that day, people will be like, preoccupied with what's a farther concern. And there's also a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ where he says that the people will be gathered that day without any clothing and uncircumcised. And then Aisha, she asked them, well, people, they will be, unclothed, won't they, men and women, like look at each other? And the Prophet said they will have something far more concerned that day, right? They'll be worried about something far greater than that to even think about that. So you can imagine how great this day of judgment will be. Because of its greatness also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given it many names. If we look through the Quran and the Sunnah, and then the Arabic language in general, when something is given lots of different names, it's given some type of like priority, right? Or some type of great importance. For example, in the Arab literature, if you read, there's so many names about the camels, or about the swords, or about, in Jahiliyyah, about the wine, or about, the tribe and stuff like that. Why? Because it's something of great importance. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions certain things also in the Quran with many different names because of its great importance, and from these things is Yawm al-Qiyamah. So we'll go through some of the names inshallah to get an idea of the greatness of it. And through these names, there's many different names. We're going to go through maybe a little bit over 20, but there's also many adjectives. We don't have the time to go through all of them, but inshallah through these names you'll get an idea of what Yawm al-Qiyamah is about. First and foremost, we'll start with the name Yawm al-Qiyamah itself, al-Qiyamah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Allahu la ilaha illa huwa liyajma'annakum ila yawm al-qiyamati la rayba fi. That Allah, there's nobody worthy of worship except Him. Nobody worthy of worship except Him. Verily He will gather you all on the day of Qiyamah, that there is no doubt in it. Right? What does Qiyamah mean? Where does Qiyamah come from? To stand, right? Standing up. That's the day that everybody will stand, right, before the Lord. They will be unable to sit that day because they're standing for judgment. They will be brought upright as well, right? So on Yawm al-Qiyamah, you will all stand before your Lord, right? And when you're facing judgment, it's not a time to sit down and relax. So people will be like on edge, waiting and trying to figure out what's going to be their end. The other name for Qiyamah is Al-Yawm al-Akhir. What is Al-Yawm al-Akhir?
Afterlife?
What is it?
Afterlife?
The afterlife? Yeah, literally, Yawm is day, and Akhir, what does Akhir mean? After or last. It will be the last day, right? Yawm al-Akhir. Why is it called the last day?
There won't be any more days. It's eternal life after that.
Yes, there's no more days after that. There's no more sunsets, right? Time will will cease. It will be just eternity, right? Those in Jannah will live in eternal bliss, and those in Jahannam will live in eternal suffering. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. That righteousness is believing in Allah and the day, the final day. Also, as-sa'a. What's as-sa'a? Time. Yes, mashallah. Some translate it as hour, but the correct translation is time, a portion of time. Because it's going to, there's different tafasir, different explanations for it, but the miracle of Yawm al-Qiyamah is that, time is somewhat relative. So for some, it's going to feel, or it's going to be 50,000 sana, like 50,000 years. They will stand before the Lord, waiting for the judgment. And that's for the disbelievers, right? And for some say, the grave sinners. It will feel very, very long for them. And that's, kind of extra torture upon torture, waiting for that judgment that long. But as for the believers, it's going to be like praying 2 rak'ahs. In some narrations, between Asr and Maghrib. It will pass very quickly and very easily for them, right? Because they spent their time, the sa'ah in the dunya, working hard for the sa'ah of the akhirah that's going to come. And therefore, they will be compensated with ease, inshaAllah. And as for those who forgot the sa'ah, they didn't use their time in this dunya to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that time will come back to haunt them on the Day of Judgment. طيب. يوم البعث, day of, what's al-ba'ath? Resurrection. Where will they be resurrected from? From the grave. They will be coming out of the grave when the trumpet is blown. Everything and everybody will come forth from the grave. يا الناس إن كنتم في ريب من البعث فإنا خلقناكم من تراب. O humankind, if you are in doubt of the resurrection, we created you from dust. Meaning that our first creation is more difficult than to be brought back again, right? So everybody will be brought back to go forth before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, Yawm al-Khuruj. Similarly, it's the coming out, right? When you come out of the grave, going forth to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يوم يسمعون الصيحة بالحق ذلك يوم الخروج. The day that they will hear the loud sound, the trumpet, that's the day of al-Khuruj, coming out. And then, like we cited today, al-Qari'ah. You know what anybody knows what al-Qari'ah means?
The reckoning?
No. القارعة ما القارعة وما أدراك ما القارعة.
Is it the calamity?
No, that's طامة الكبرى. It's the striking. So القارعة comes from like the whip. When you whip something very hard, that's striking. That's القارعة, right? Because it will strike human beings with terror that day. They will be terrified and filled with fright, right? And some say it comes from the original word also meaning barren, like qara al-ard, which means that some people will come forth with nothing that day, right? You will come forth with nothing except your good deeds. So the believers of the day will be in benefit and plenty, but the disbelievers will come with nothing. They will be barren because they've done no fruits. They've brought no fruits forward. Yawm al-Qiyamah. طيب. يوم الفصل. What's fasl in Arabic language?
Is that classroom?
Classroom? Yeah, it could be classroom. Why is it?
I thought soft was class.
It's also class, but fasl is also meaning like it's one of the meanings of classroom. Why is that?
All the people are going to gather up in one place.
Not necessarily. So how many grades do you have in school?
7.
7 grades? Why is that?
Because you teach 7 different classes.
You have 7 different classes? So they're separated, right?
Yeah.
So Yawm al-Qiyamah, al-Fasl, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will separate the believers from the disbelievers, the righteous from the sinners, right? Everybody will be categorized and put in their proper category. So Yawm al-Fasl is like the day of categorization, you could say, or putting everybody in their proper category and making the decision of who's going to pass and who's not going to pass. طيب, يوم الدين, the day of recompensation. Yeah, right. Maliki yawm ad-din. Everybody will be compensated for what they used to do. Reckoning is also, you can say reckoning as well.
How does that relate to deen?
Deen, and our.
What we understand as deen is a yawm deen.
It's something that, like, we owe to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like we're obligated to fulfill, and we will be judged accordingly, right? Like dain also, which comes from a similar root word, is like a debt that you owe, right, to somebody else, and you have to pay it back. It will be accounted for or reckoned for it. And say Yawm ad-Din is the ultimate reckoning, that everybody will be brought forth to decide who is going to be of the righteous and who is going to be from the evil ones. Also, as-Sakha. Sakh is what? Anybody know? فإذا جاءت الصاخ.
Yes.
قياس. It has to do with Israfil.
One of the trumpets.
Yeah, the sound from the trumpet, the day that the trumpet will be blown. It's considered like a blast, basically, very loud blast. Something that everybody will be made to hear, no matter what their situation is. And then, الطامة الكبرى. الطامة الكبرى is a great catastrophe, right? Why is it a catastrophe? This is also applying for the disbelievers. Because for the believers, inshallah, they will be exempt from many of these punishments. But for the disbelievers, they will experience the worst of the worst, right? So it's going to be the greatest catastrophe for them because they didn't prepare for this day, right? They denied it, they belied it, they made fun of it, they did nothing to prepare for it. Now this day is a reality for them. Yawm al-Haq. Al-Haq is also one of the names of Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? The truth, the reality has come true to save them. And it's a catastrophe for them because now there's nothing they can do about it. It's too late, right? Their judgment has come. Also, the Tamat al-Kubra seems to be like an overwhelming event. But al-Ghashiyah is probably more better translation for overwhelming. Al-Ghashiyah, another name, meaning to overwhelm or to overtake, because the people that day will be overwhelmed with the actual events of the Day of Judgment. You can imagine how basically every single human being that's ever existed on the face of the earth, every single jinn that's ever existed, all the angels, every single animal and creature that's ever existed, they will all be gathered that day. That's why it's also called Yawm al-Jum'ah or Yawm al-Jam'ah, right? The day of gathering. Because it's the greatest gathering that's ever occurred and ever will occur. After that, there will be no greater gathering than that, right? Because people will be separated after that into heaven and to hell. So, another name is Yawm al-Hasra, the day of regret. As we mentioned previously too, that every single person will regret something. Even the righteous will regret not being more righteous. Even the shaheed, somewhat will regret not being able to come back and do it again. Subhanallah. So imagine the disbelievers who find out this is the reality that they denied and they can't do anything about it anymore. They will be forever in the hellfire. Imagine that type of regret that they will have. Right? So also Yawm al-Hasra. Al-Hasra is like the highest form of regret, right? We have nadam, nadam is like a regret, but hasra is like that thing that eats away at you so much that it's like the worst form of regret because there's nothing you can do about it. Yawm al-Khulud, that's actually a nice name from the Yawm al-Qiyamah. It's a pleasing thing for the believers. Means what is it? Welcome. Yeah, it's kind of welcoming eternity, but in a pleasant manner. Udkhuluha bi salam, dhalika yawm al-khulud. Enter it with peace. This is the day of forever. Meaning that the believers that they will find out they will never die again. They will never taste any type of hardship or displeasure or misery ever again. They're just going to be happy forever now. So yawm al-khulud is a nice thing for the believers, basically. It could also be in a negative sense for the disbelievers because they will be eternity in Jahannam. Wa'udhu billah. Shaykh Omar, you want to say something?
Tamat al-Kubra, where is that an example?
In the Quran?
Anywhere.
فإذا جاءت طامة الكبرى يوم يتذكر الإنسان ما سعى وبرزت الجحيم لمن يرى. Surah Nazi'at. So when the day of the great catastrophe comes, the person will remember or think what he has put forth, right? فَأَمَّا مَنْ طَغَى وَآثَرَ الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا, the one who transgressed and preferred the life of this world, فَإِنَّ جَهِيمَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى, hellfire will be his abode. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى, as for those who feared standing before the Lord and they held their nafs back, فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى, verily Jannah will be his place of abode, right? So subhanAllah, when you sacrifice and work hard in this dunya, you will have the pleasure of Jannah. And for those who transgressed and didn't do anything good in this dunya, they will have the hellfire. Yawm al-Hisab. What's Yawm al-Hisab?
The ultimate day.
What does Hisab mean? Hasad. If I see.
Isn't there a hadith about hisab, like the 70,000 that won't have hisab?
Yes.
So I'm trying to figure out what the, because the first word I'm thinking of is judgment, but
in a sense, but I can give you a hint in Arabic. Yes, accounting. حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُحَاسِبُوا, right? As Umar would say, take account of yourself before you are taken account of Yawm al-Qiyamah. So Yawm al-Hisab, the day of reckoning. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَضِلُّونَ عَنْ سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ لَهُمْ عَذَابٌ شَدِيدٌ بِمَا نَسُوا يَوْمَ الْحِسَابِ. Verily the ones who astray from the path of Allah, they will have a severe torment because they forgot the day of accounting, the day of reckoning, Yawm al-Hisab. It's a hisab because every single deed will be accounted for. Every good deed, every bad deed, right? They will be weighed and accounted for. So you cannot ever blame Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for being unjust, right? Everything will be accounted for that day. Also, people will be able to get their own, revenge and accounting from other people who have done them injustice, or even animals upon animals. طيب, يوم الوعيد. What is wa'id? What is wa'ad? Wa'ad. Not wahad. Wa'ad. Wa'ad. Wa'ada? Nobody? It means to promise. So wa'ad is a promise and wa'id is a promise. But what's the difference between the two?
One is more significant promise.
You can say that. I'll give you an example. If you do your homework, I promise to give you some type of treat, for example, right? And then if you don't do your homework, I promise I'm going to give you some type of punishment. So the first one is wa'ad and the second one is wa'id. So a positive, connotation is wa'ad. I keep my promise, my oath. Wa'id is like a warning. I'm giving you a warning. Basically, Yawm al-Wa'id is when this is the day that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He promised everybody, especially the disbelievers, but they negated it, so they will be, held accountable. So one of the names also is Yawm al-Wa'id. وَنُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ ذَلِكَ يَوْمُ الْوَعِيدِ. This is the day that the trumpet will be blown. This is the day that you have been warned about. Right? Yawm al-Wa'id. Ya Azifa. Yawm al-Azifa. Anybody know what that means? Azifatul Azifa. It's like something drawing closer and closer and closer. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that بُعِثْتُ وَالسَّاعَةَ كَهَاتَيْنِ. Like we mentioned before, that the Prophet ﷺ was sent with the hour like these two, meaning they were very close to one another. Also, is like some narrations that say that it was a competition between the coming of the Prophet ﷺ and the final hour, the Day of Judgment. That's how close they are. But the Prophet ﷺ came first. And his coming and his death are actually the major signs that the Qiyamah is coming very close. So subhanAllah, it is getting closer and closer, and that's what Azifa means. That's coming close to us, it's close at hand. يوم الجمعة وكذلك أوحينا إليك القرآن العربية لتنذر أم القرى ومن حولها وتنذر يوم الجمع لا ريب فيه. That we reveal to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Arabic Quran, so that you may warn the mother of all towns, meaning Mecca, and all around them, and that you may warn of the day of assembly, Yawm al-Jam'ah, right? We say Yawm al-Jum'ah, why? Because we gather to pray the Jum'ah together, right? Lots of people come together in the masjid of al-Jami'ah, the major masjid, the masjid of the gathering, right? Jum'ah is the day that the Qiyamah actually will occur, the day that Adam was sent down, the day that Adam was repented to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the day that resurrection will occur. But Jam'ah is bringing together, assembling. We said it's the day of assembly because it is the greatest assembly in all time. From the beginning of creation until the end of the creation, there will be no greater assembly than this day. And why is that? I already mentioned it already. Everybody's going to be categorized, but also how are they going to be categorized? Because they are all there, right? You can imagine, like I said, every single person from Adam until the last man on earth is going to be there. Every single angel that's ever existed is going to be there. Every single jinn is going to be there. Every cow, lamb, sheep, chicken, goat, whatever you can think, every single animal is going to be there, right? Maybe even the sea animals, Allahu A'lam, but every creature is going to come and be gathered that day. And they will have the opportunity to take justice from one another. So no, that day will not pass until justice has been achieved for every single person, even for the disbelievers, even for the animals. Right? So Yawm al-Jam'ah is the greatest assembly. There will be, no assembly greater than that ever again. Right? Because once Qiyamah is over, everybody will be split apart. Those that go to heaven, those that go to Jahannam. Al-Haqqa, that's the comes from the word haqq, which is the truth, and also it shows the inevitable day, that there's no escaping it. It's going to come to you. It's a reality, right? It's the truth. There's nothing to deny it. The disbelievers, they denied it, they made fun of it, they said it's not going to happen. Now Allah is saying, Al-Haqqa, right? It's coming, it's true, it is going to happen. It is happening. There's no denying it. Right? That day they will awake to the reality that they can never deny, and they can never, make up for it anymore now. It's too late. This is also, the truth is fulfilled as the Prophet ﷺ told us, and as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, and Allah promised, and the Prophet ﷺ promised, right? هَذَا مَا وَعَدَ رَبُّكُمْ هَلْ وَجَدْتُمْ مَا وَعَدَ رَبُّكُمْ حَقًّا. Did you find what your Lord has promised you to be true? Right? You denied it in the dunya, now what do you say now? Right, there's no excuse. It's happening. And then there's Yawm al-Talaq. What is that? What does talaq mean? That's talaq. With a ta. Talaq is something different. No divorce in Jannah, inshallah. Huh? Meeting, yes. To meet. Talaqi, right? So everybody will be gathered together and meet with one another. There will be like, from Adam, he will see his grandchildren, great-grandchildren, all his generations, subhanAllah. We can see the prophets, the people gathering behind, every ummah will gather behind their prophet, meeting with your friends, meeting with their families. The oppressor will be met with the oppressed, those zalimeen, those unjust, jabbareen in the dunya. They will be meeting with those that they oppressed, meaning that they won't be able to escape that day. They have to face their accuser face to face, meet with them, and they will get their revenge taken upon them. So, everybody also will meet their deeds, their good deeds or their bad deeds. What did you do? It's going to come back to you on that day. طيب, يوم التناد. What is tanad? Calling. يوم ينادي المنادي, right? ويوم يا قوم إني أخاف عليكم يوم التناد. The person from the story of Musa alayhi salam, he said, "Oh my people, I fear to you the day of calling," right? The different explanations, like everybody, the believers will be called from the people of Jannah by the best of names. The people of Jahannam will be called by the worst. They will be called to the Jahannam. Some say that because, the people of Araf will be calling to the people of Jannah to help, stuff like that. Also, there will be, like I said, because of so many people and so many creatures, it's going to be like very loud that day as well, right? So there's going to be like so much different voices and calling and sounds that day as well. People will be calling to the prophets to intercede for them. People will be calling to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. People will be calling to their friends to help, anything that day. So it's one of the names is Yawm al-Tanad. Also, Yawm al-Taghabun. Anybody know what that means? Taghabun, yes, you kind of get recompense. So it's an interesting word. Like originally, it means to in business to ghabana is like to take advantage of somebody, kind of like even get over on them or try to cheat them or something like that. So Yawm al-Qiyamah, the disbelievers will feel that they cheated themselves because they didn't do what they were supposed to do. Something so simple that could have gotten them into Jannah, they refused it. So they will feel like they cheated themselves so much. Also, some people will feel that because of the little good deeds that they have done and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's infinite mercy or great mercy, they will achieve something like far, far greater than the work that they put in for it, right? And then likewise, the disbelievers will feel like they were cheated because the believers, they get so much reward just for doing the simple things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded, and these people, they couldn't do that, so they're in the hellfire forever. And then some say also the people of Jannah got the better of the people of the hellfire, obviously. Also, Yawm Mashhud, the day that is witnessed, right? Witnessed by the angels are watching. People are going. Everybody that day is going to be either witnessed or a witness themselves, right? As the Prophet ﷺ, he said that he will be a witness upon the nations, and his nation will be a witness upon the other nations, right? So it's going to be witnessing that day to justify. And we will witness and bear witness to all of the prophets that came before us because we know that they are the truth. Also, we will bear witness against the disbelievers, right? And the oppressors and the ones that did injustice. Also, one of the names is Yawmun Asir, the hard day. It's going to be very difficult for the people, especially the disbelievers. It will be the hardest of days because they realize the loss that they're facing now. Once the Qiyamah is over, they will go. So the disbelievers, from the time they die until this time, it's just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And then they will go into the ultimate evil ending, which is the hellfire, which is even worse than all that's preceded, right? So it's a hard, hard day for them. But for the believers, alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make things easier and easier and better for them until they go into Jannah, and it will get better and better and better. Yawm al-Sara'ir. What's Sara'ir? Secrets, right? Because that day, there's no more secrets. Everybody will be exposed, except for whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses to give sitr to, covering the faults of the believers, or the ones that covered their faults in the dunya. But everything else, there's no hiding, there's no faking, there's no lying anymore. Everything will be brought to light, right? So these are some of the names of the Day of Judgment. And like I said, there's others that I didn't mention. There's also like many more adjectives. But as we've said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives so many names to it because of its profound, importance, right? Anything that has, if you look in the Quran, that has more than one name or many names to it, it means there's something special about that thing. And this is a very important aspect of our belief system because, it gives us kind of like a reasoning and a hikmah to look forward to something that's going to come. It gives us a peace of heart. Sometimes we see so much injustice around us, so much dhulm, so much misery, so much suffering, and we're like, but then we think, wait, Yawm al-Qiyamah is coming, Allah will take care of it. They might get away with it in this dunya, but they're not going to get away with it Yawm al-Qiyamah, right? So it's a very important aspect of our aqeedah. Another part of the Qiyamah is the blowing of the trumpet. that day, ونفخ في الصور فصعق من في السماوات ومن في الأرض إلا من شاء الله. That day the trumpet will be blown and everything in the heavens and the earth will fall asunder. They will swoon, right? Except those whom Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. Israfil, the angel, he is commanded, that's his only job, to blow the trumpet, right? And from his creation until now, he's standing with the trumpet, holding it, waiting for the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. His eyes don't blink because he's looking at the throne, waiting for the command. So how many hundreds of thousands or millions of years he's waiting, subhanAllah. And when that happens, the first blowing of the trumpet, everything will fall asunder, right? And the second, everything will be resurrected. Right? They said, إِلَّا مَنْ شَاءَ اللَّهِ, except whom those Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. This is something that's kind of like, we don't know for sure who is exempt from that. Some of the different explanations is that it could be the creatures of Jannah, like Hurul Ain, or the things that are already in Jannah, because they don't have death. Nothing dies in Jannah anymore once you get into Jannah, right? Others say that it could be the ones that are already dead, because they've already had their, taking of the soul, basically. So they're already in the grave. It's not necessary. And some say that there's like certain righteous ones that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like the martyrs and some of the anbiya, will be exempt from it. But at the end of the day, we don't know for sure. It's something that's from the unseen. But most, Ibn Taymiyyah, I think, and others say that it's the people of Jannah, they are exempt from it. The ones that are the creatures of Jannah that are living there right now. Wallahu a'lam. طيب. When the resurrection occurs after the blowing of the trumpet and the people are revived, it's going to be like a different reality, right? Will be like a different creation. It's not going to be the same anymore. And, like, it's going to be like, for example, some people will be walking on their faces, right? And the Sahaba, they ask how, this happened to the Prophet. He said, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets you to walk on your feet, He can make you to walk on the face, right? So it's different. This is the people that are the Jabbareen. Some of them will come like little ants. They were big and boastful and arrogant in the dunya. They will come like tiny things like that, right? And the ones that were mutakabbirin, arrogant, they'll be, picking their heads up, looking down upon the people. They will be walking on their faces in disgrace on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. The first person for the earth to open up for them is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, "Ana sayyidu walid Adam." I am the leader of the children of Adam, and I will be the first to go out of the grave, and I will be the first to intercede on the Day of Judgment. Right. So this is something special for our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Israfil. That's another one. Some of the exemptions some scholars say too is Israfil and Jibreel and Malik al-Maut. But the correct opinion is that he will blow the trumpet and he will be given the command by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also to die. Kullu min alayha fan. Right, everything will perish. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give him, after everything, give him the command to also fall asunder and then resurrect him. And then he will blow the trumpet again to resurrect everybody else. Wallahu a'lam. But some say that he's exempt, some of the tafsir. Blows the trumpet. ينفخ في الصور, نعم. Yeah. And the sur is like a trumpet. It comes from like the horn, basically, right? Also that day, like we said, the people will be gathered without clothing, subhanAllah, because of the uncircumcised as well, like they were first created. And they will not be looking at one another, like we said, because they're going to be so preoccupied about what's going on. And then some say that after that, according to your good deeds, the clothing will come upon the person. So the more good deeds that one has, the more clothing that they will be given on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. The place is something like a new place, not the same earth anymore, right? They will be gathered somewhere else. يوم تبدل الأرض غير الأرض والسماوات برزوا لله الواحد القهار. On that day the earth will be changed into another earth, and so will the heavens, and they will be, brought forth before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the irresistible, the all-powerful. That day also, like we said, will be the scariest of days. The fear and the terror that face the creation will be far more than anything that they've ever, experienced before. You can imagine the severity of it, like when people are coming out of the grave, being resurrected, right, and seeing the chaos and the fear and like the screaming and the yelling and the gathering that day, how scary it's going to be. And this is also, like I said, predominantly for the disbelievers. The believers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them a tranquility and a peace and a gift, inshallah, for their hearts. Except, like we said, in those three places the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, that time will be too scary even for the believers, because they're in the middle of figuring out what's going to happen exactly, right? When they get their books, when they are getting the deeds weighed, the scale, and when they're crossing the sirat. It will be less scary than the Yawm al-Qiyamah. Because that's the scariness of the dunya. This is a new one. Yes.
What about the people that already know they're going to Jannah? For example, like the 10 people that have given the good news.
Yeah, even the prophets know that they're going to Jannah, inshallah. But I think, sometimes when you're facing a catastrophe, you're still worried at that time, Like, sometimes, this is a very simple example and there's not comparison. But as a student, for example, and you studied very well for a test, and you think like you're going to ace it and do very well, but even if when you take the test, you have that little bit of like anxiety and like a little bit of fear until when? Until you get the final result, right? And then if it says A, mashallah, you're at peace 100%. But until you get that result, you're still kind of scared, right? This is something far greater than that test. So, even then people will have that anxiety or that fear, right? Even the prophets, we're going to get to that hadith inshallah, but they will say that, the best of the humankind, I did such and such, go to this prophet instead of me. I did such and such, go to this prophet. And he's worried about nafsi, right? And these are the best of humankind. So imagine everybody else. And like we said, that they will run away from their own family, right? يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ وَصَاحِبَتِهِ وَبَنِيهِ. Your closest companions, your parents, your siblings, your spouses, your children, people are running away because they are scared that day. فَإِذَا نُفِخَ فِي الصُّورِ فَلَا أَنْسَابَ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ وَلَا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ. When the trumpet is blown, there will be no kinship that day, nor will they ask about one another. Right? Everybody's going to be concerned about themselves. Nafsi. Also, it's the fact that it's going to be so long for many people, right? Imagine having to wait and wait and wait. Just the waiting in itself sometimes is a scary thing. The disbelievers, because of the severity of that day, they will be willing to give up anything just to get the day over with, right? And if the disbelieving ones, who had wronged others, would give everything upon the earth just so that they can get out of that situation. They will wish that they will, يا ليتني كنت ترابا. They will wish that they would be dust, right? Because of the severity of it. On that day, this universe as we know it will not, longer exist. So, the mountains, which we see as some of the strongest, most stabilizing forces, will be like, floating, basically destructing, moving, because of the power of that day. The stars will come apart, the moon and the sun will cease. There will be earthquakes shaking the earth, and like I said, it's a different type of earth, but it's just the day is so like grievous that everything is changing, everything is scary. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will actually grab everything up and say, who is the king this day, right? Who is the Lord? Who is the powerful one? Even the seas will be on fire, right? The sea, the water, that's usually something that's cool and comforting or whatever. The opposite will be fire. The sky will be split asunder. The moon's eclipse, the stars to fall. If you look through the different surahs and ayats, subhanAllah, it's a very powerful day. The more ayats you read about it and you understand those ayat, it's something that's like, you can imagine how it's going to feel that day. Even when we have something simple like these thunderstorms and heavy rain, you feel sometimes a little bit, scared, right? A lot of people. And this is just a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of what's going to happen Yawm al-Qiyamah, And this is why that the more we learn about it, the more we can prepare for it. So that inshallah, because the more you prepare for it, the less fear that you will have that day, right? When you study about it and you understand it and you fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you prepare, then inshallah Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give you more comfort, right? The more you fear in the dunya, the less you will fear in the akhirah. The less you fear in the dunya, the more you will fear in the akhirah. I don't think we'll be able to complete the Yawm al-Qiyamah, inshallah. But with our next session, inshallah, I will complete it. It could take like 5 or 6 sessions, but I'm doing a summarized version, inshallah, so we can do half today and then the next half next week, inshallah. So we'll stop here for questions, and then next week we have our fasting, inshallah, on the 9th and the 10th of Muharram, right? And it's going to be a Friday and Saturday. So basically, inshallah, you're going to have iftar here, so we can have iftar, and then maybe like if we have some time, we can do it right after the iftar. If you guys want to do that, or do you want to cancel for next week? It's up to you. Next Friday, we're going to fast, inshallah, and have iftar. So after iftar, you want to continue the Yawm al-Qiyamah, finish it, inshallah? Okay, khair. We'll try the... Yes?
What's the relationship between the Day of Judgment and the Arafah? Is there some sort of relationship?
It's not... I don't know like if there's any like text that says something specific about that, but I know I've heard the comparison in the sense that on Yawm Arafah, the gathering in the dunya is like a small indication of what's going to happen in the akhirah, because you have everybody from all over the world gathering in that one section on the outskirts of Mecca, right? But everybody's wearing the same ihram, and you hear that like kind of murmur, like like everybody talking, but it's all like you hear this like kind of a continuous noise and stuff like that. So you can only imagine Yawm al-Qiyamah, how much that times how many billions, right? Even I remember when I used to go to the haram during crowded times and stuff, I would imagine that same thing, especially during the times of Hajj, or in Ramadan when people are making Umrah, and it's just like so crowded, and you hear like just the continuous murmur or like noise of the people, and then like the different nations and the different rich and poor, and everybody just gathered at one spot, and it kind of gives you like a little idea of what's going to happen Yawm al-Qiyamah, subhanAllah. So just from that aspect, but in terms of like a hadith or something, I don't know. But yeah. Yes.
What's the point of the the angels being gathered around Yawm al-Qiyamah, and they have nothing to be accountable for.
The angels will be witnesses for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right, and for us. And it's just it's like the great event, you know. So like they come to bear witness what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prepared them for all this time, you know.
I have a question about the Ya'juj and Ma'juj. When Ya'juj and Ma'juj come out, they will destroy everything, right?
Anything in their path, yeah.
So during the Zulkarnain, people complain about Ya'juj and Ma'juj. That means there are people, there are Ya'juj and Ma'juj.
Yeah.
And Ya'juj and Ma'juj did not do anything to this people. So they want Zulkarnain to put a barrier.
Yeah, but they might not have been at the number that they're going to be when they come out. They're still maybe growing at that time, so they haven't reached the severity. But they were causing trouble and causing mischief. That's why the other people complained to Dhul Qarnayn.
The number is not that big.
Maybe it had not grown as much yet, or he was given the power to put them in their place, basically, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Growing up.
They could be continuously growing up, yeah. Yes? For Yawm al-Qiyamah? Because mostly it's a scary event and it's meant to bring our attention to like what's going to happen if we're not believers, right? So it's a warning. It's for the Yawm al-Qiyamah is for believers and disbelievers, but why is it like predominantly like scary or negative connotations for the names and stuff like that? For us to inspire us to do better, to avoid being in the category that falls into punishment. And for the disbelievers, it's a warning for them. Basically they hear these descriptions and they see like, what's going to happen, or they, so hopefully they will come to senses before it's too late. But on Yawm al-Qiyamah, alhamdulillah, it won't be so severe for the believers. Like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them, relief and blessings and protections. And then we're going to talk about, hopefully if we have a chance, some things that you can do to protect you on the Yawm al-Qiyamah, so you won't have to go through, such a severe trial, inshallah, and tribulation. Yes?
The Shuhada, who are the fighters, they still are going to go through Yawm al-Qiyamah and these types of things, or are they?
They still have to go through some aspect of it, but they won't be as tested. Even the Anbiya, the prophets of Allah, will go through it. Yes.
So the Prophet said the three people that will be thrown to Jahannam before anybody else are the Hufaz, the people like of Zakat, and the Shuhadas. But so when will they actually be thrown into Jahannam?
When?
Yeah.
After Qiyamah, or during the judgment part.
During the bridge time?
No. The bridge is mostly for the believers, and we'll get to that inshallah probably next week, yeah. But there will be a separation of the believers and the disbelievers, and the disbelievers will be thrown into the hellfire, and the believers and the munafiqeen, actually the hypocrites, will be going on to the next phase, and then the hypocrites will be gone as well, and then only the believers will be left, and then there's going to be the sinful ones from the believers, and the sinful ones, some of them will be, slowed down on the bridge, and some of them will be pulled into the hellfire because they had too many bad deeds and they have to be purified. So we'll get into that next week, inshallah. طيب جزاكم الله خير سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect us on the day, inshallah, and to make us from the believers.